Hello, today I'm going to teach you how to make this face mask. To make your face masks, you're going to need 2 layers of 100% cotton, one for the outer layer and one for the lining or the inner layer. You're also going to need bias binding, and I have 100% cotton bias binding here, which we're going to fold and press in half. This is going to be your ties for the mask around your face. Make sure your fabrics are 100% cotton because they are able to take a high heat in the washing machine. Once you have pinned your fabric in place, your pattern in place, take care to cut out exactly to that of your pattern. Always tilt your blade towards your pattern piece, as this will help you to get a much cleaner cut, taking care not to cut your pattern piece itself. Once you have cut out both your lining and your outer, transfer your markings for your pleats onto each of the layers, like so. I placed my pattern piece on top like so, making sure it's a true fit, and then just made little marks representative of where my pleats are on each side. Then fold up your pleats, making sure that you are following the same direction as indicated on your pattern piece. Make sure that your chin edge is at the top and that your nose is at the bottom on the lining piece. So pinch your pleat, fold it up, make the edges meet. This one we are also folding up. Make your 2 little markers match each other, like so. This is now ready for pressing. We're going to press each side, ready for stitching. We're now going to just gently press the edges to help them stay nice and flat while we sew. Now on your outer layer, you're going to mark the pleats in exactly the same way, like so. And this time we're going to follow the direction of these pleats, bearing in mind N is for nose, C is for chin, just so it helps us keep a sense of the direction. So we're going to take our first pleat and we're folding it downwards to match the second marker. In the same way, on the other side, we take that pleat and fold it down to meet the marker. Take our second marker and just keep pinning them in place. This will enable you to have 3 pleats, all folding downward, like so. Repeat on the other side. Fold together, in and out, and last one, fold together, in and out. We now take this over to press those 2 edges again. We're now going to press the ends of this side for the pleats down, flip it over, and just press this edge down. We're going to take our length of 2 meters of cotton bias binding tape and we're going to fold it in half and press the whole 2 meter length in half. This makes stitching your bias binding in half even and makes it stronger, having a double thickness of binding tape. I've used 100% cotton again, as this will last longer in high heat washes. Once you have pressed your bias binding in half, you're going to cut it into 4 equal lengths of 50 centimeters. That will give you your 4 straps to tie around your head. We're now going to sew our pleats in place on our lining, and this is to base them in place so that they don't move when we're trying to stitch them to the right side of the other outer mask, like that. I've used my presser foot on the edge so that I'm not taking away too much from the width of the mask. Repeat this process on all of your pleats to baste them and hold them in place. Snip off all your threads as well, guys, so that you can keep it nice and tidy as you sew. We're now going to press these pleats in place. So pop your presser foot on the edge of the seam, pop your needle in and take your first pin out. Hold on to your threads as you begin to sew, forwards and backwards, and stitch all the way across. If you have a pleat twisting back like so, just stop ahead of it, lift your presser foot, push that pleat underneath your presser foot, bring your presser foot back down again, remove your pin, forwards and backwards. When you've stopped doing your stitching, remove it and snip off all the little threads so that we can keep it nice and tidy as we go. We're now going to stitch the straps that help to tie the mask around our face. We're going to take the strips that we had cut 50 centimeter lengths of on our bias binding, and we folded it in half. What we're now going to do is cut out of the folded edge just a little triangle like so. You're then going to open up your bias binding, and we're going to reduce some of the bulk in that seam on the edge of our binding and trim this now. Now, these applications you can use on various things as well. So whenever you're using a binding and you're wanting to finish it off neatly as a tie, this is a very useful technique. So what we're going to do is fold it over and press the little V that we created, press those two ends together like so. Then what we're going to do is fold our binding in half. Give it a good finger press, and now you can see all of those raw edges will be inside that little fold. We're now going to stitch down this side, reverse and back to the edge, turn it and continue to sew each strap all the way down the length, reversing when you get to the end. We're now going to place our presser foot on the edge like so, and we're going to close up the top of our bias binding with a few stitches forwards and backwards, needle in, and then lift and pivot so that we can now stitch down the length of our tie, neatly closing in the ends. You may want to pull on your thread ever so gently from behind to help you continue to move, because there's actually quite a little bit of fabric with your binding there for your feed dogs to actually grab and push it through. Continue to sew down the length of your strap, reversing when you get to the bottom. We're now going to join the two sides together for the nose by placing the pieces right sides together. I always find it much easier to pin with my pins coming at a 90-degree angle to the seam edge. This helps to keep your seams together, and it also means that you can extract your pins a lot more easily as you stitch down the length of the seam. We're now going to join the two nose pieces together on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, stitching forwards and backwards, so doing a back stitch at the beginning and at the end of the seam. We're now going to join the two edges together of the nose by doing a little reverse and sticking to our 1 centimeter seam allowance guide. Remember to stop, then take your pin out. Sew down the length of the nose join all the way to the end, remembering to reverse as you get to the bottom. Backstitching or reversing always helps to keep your seams from separating and opening up. Trim your threads off nice and neatly, and then we're going to press this seam allowance open. So we're going to take it over to the iron, and we're going to press the seam open. Press your seam open along the edge like so. I used a friction pen in my marking, and what's brilliant about that is that most of the pen disappears when you put some heat on it from the iron. Once you've pressed your seam open, you're going to press it towards the lining, and we're then going to overlock this edge closed. Overlocking will stop your seam allowance from fraying in the wash. Now, if you don't have an overlocker, don't worry. You can use a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine to give you much a similar effect, or your machine may have an overlocking stitch. Follow your instructions on your machine manual to get your overlock stitch. So what we're going to do now is to press in the edge of our lining of our mask, fold over just 5 millimeters and press. Now this is the chin edge of our lining, so we give that a good press, and then we fold over another 5 millimeters. This we will now be able to pin and stitch in place. On the other side, we're going to fold over 5 millimeters, mind the steam, like so, and then another 5 millimeters. So this is a way of us being able to stitch the hem flat without any raw edges coming out in the wash. And then we're going to come back and mark our fold line a bit later. But for now, we're going to stitch down the length of the bottom of the mask on both our outer layer and our lining layer. We're now going to stitch down the edge of the seam. I'm going to place my press foot on the edge of my fold over here, and I'm going to move my needle position over to the right, just so that it will definitely catch the edge of that seam. You'll also notice that my pins are at a 45-degree angle to the seam edge. This is a pinning method I use, which helps me to pin very small seams very accurately without having to tack them first. To the bottom, and again back stitch. Repeat this on the other side, and again remember, keep it nice and tidy on each side. Repeat this on the other side of your mask. We are now going to pin on the ties. And we're going to pin these onto the corners of our lining, like so. So we have all 4 ties attached to our lining edges. And we're going to stitch these on in very much the same way that we pre-stitched, our pleats in place. We're now going to stitch the ties in place using a basting stitch. So hold onto your threads forwards and backwards, little back stitch, remove, and you're going to do the same to all 4 of the ties to hold them in place. And this is just to stop them coming undone when we join the side seams together to finish off our mask. Now, with our ties attached to our lining, we're going to take our mask and fold it right sides facing each other. And we're going to pin the 2 side seams together down the length of the seam. Again, I'm pinning at 90-degree angles to the seam edge. Make sure that your ties are nice and neatly tucked inside our mask, like so. And then what you're going to do is fold the bottom of the mask over, like so. This creates the little opening. We're now going to stitch down the edge of the mask, press a foot down, forwards and backwards. And take your pin out. Make sure that you feed your pleats in towards the machine. And be very careful here that we stitch over the edge and give a good back stitch at the bottom of the mask. Lift your presser foot and take it out and snip it off. If you have an overlocker and you want to tidy up the edges of the seams, just whiz down along the edge. If you don't have an overlocker, you can also use your overlock stitch on your machine. By overlocking the edge of the seams, you're just ensuring that the fabric is not going to fray in the wash. And do that onto the other side of your mask as well. So that's it. Now we are going to turn our mask around and turn it the right way round. Give a good tug on those strings. With all the back stitching that's gone on reversing, there's no way that that will ever come undone. And there you have it. Your face mask. This is a child size one that I made for my daughter. That just in case we go out, at least she is protected. I have done an adult version as well. But really, guys, the brilliance about this is that you've got that little pocket that enables you to put another filtering mechanism inside your mask. And being 100% cotton, it is perfectly safe to wash on a super hot heat. There we go. Congratulations. Well done. Keep calm, stay safe, and so on. Well done. You finished your first face mask. Stay safe, everybody.